Hello, and welcome to the first video in a series that I'm going to do about how to do patterning on a knitting machine. So I guess this video is just going to tell us what patterning actually is and how the knitting machine does it. Now, I should also say that in this instance, for this series, I'm only talking about Japanese single bed knitting machines. Basically the ones that are made by Brother or Toyota or Knitmaster / Silver Reed / Studio. This one, you will notice, is actually a Jones, but it was sold by Jones, is actually made by Brother. Okay, so in order to understand what patterning is, let's have a look at what normally happens when we move the carriage across the needles. Now you'll notice I haven't got any yarn, I haven't got a sinker plate. We're just going to have a look. Now can you see it's making the needles make a shape? And essentially what it's doing is sticking the needle out, grabbing some yarn, oops daisy, sorry, and coming back in again. Now, that's standard knitting. So I guess the answer to the question, what is patterning, is doing anything which is different to that. So on this carriage, you will notice there are some buttons. On Brother machines, you get buttons that say part. That actually stands for partial knitting, although in a standard parlance, partial knitting is something different. So we're going to call them slip buttons or slip stitch, and then tuck buttons. So I guess what we're going to do is we're going to have a look to see what would happen if I pressed the slip buttons. I know they're marked part, but slip buttons, and see if it does something different. And have a look. Oh yeah, it does do something different, which is nothing. It doesn't move the needles at all. Now, unless you are, a Dadaist, or follower of Marcel Duchamp, then the likelihood is that that's not going to be very useful to you. So that's the other key thing about patterning, is that not only do you want to do something special to the needles, but you want to do something special to some of the needles and not to others of the needles. And so I guess it's a good idea to know how that works. So in order to demonstrate that, what I'll do is these needles are in the position you will know if you've seen my Knitting Machine for Beginners Basics series. This is called working position. I'm going to move some of them forwards. So this is a new position and we're going to call it upper working position. Now if I do that, you will notice it ignores the ones that are in working position, but the ones who are in upper working position, it knits as normal. So that's our second key point. So our 2 points are: one, the machine does something special to the needles that are in normal position, and that secondly, anything that's in upper working position, anything that's forwards, it's going to knit anyway. And the third and final component of patterning is something I'll talk about much more in another video, but we need a way to select the needles. So you could just go through and select half of them like that by hand, and if we did that, it would work perfectly well. See, it's doing it to half of them. This particular machine happens to have a means of selecting needles by pressing buttons and pulling a lever. As I say, we'll go into that much more detail later. But if I do that, you can see that it is doing normal knitting to some of them and completely ignoring all the ones that are backwards. Okay, so in a machine like this, what you would end up doing is something like this. You'd move some needles forwards, then you'd knit a row, then you'd move some needles forwards, then you'd knit a row, and so on. Okay, one more thing before we stop this video, and I will explain the actual details of how to pattern in future videos, but so far we're looking at slip stitch, which is do nothing at all to the needles. There is another one called tuck stitch, and nearly all machines have only got these two different things they can do, but you can do an awful lot with them, including things like Fair Isle, double colour, and so on, all of which are basically variations on the same. But if I do tuck stitch, you can see it does move them forwards, but not very far, just enough to grab a loop and take it back in, but not enough to actually knit. So let's say I bring half of them forward, so you should see that half of them knit as normal and half of them sort of grab a bit. So there you go. That is how patterning works. So just as a very quick recap, there are buttons on the carriage, which do something special. And the special things it does to the needles is that any needles that are left behind, in order to just normally knit, you have to bring them forwards. Okay, by the way, just one thing, if I bring them forwards but don't select any buttons, it will knit them all absolutely as standard. So next video, we shall actually do some real patterning and we can see how this works. See you next time.